Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters, and welcome back to the Islamic Shahada channel. When people around the world think of the Maldives, their minds drift to images of turquoise lagoons, white sand beaches, and luxury villas floating above the ocean. For millions of tourists, this island nation is nothing less than paradise on earth. But behind the glossy postcards lies a deeper, less told story, one that shapes not only the people of these islands, but the very identity of the state itself. The Maldives is the only country in the world where every citizen is Muslim. This is not simply a demographic fact. It is written into the constitution, practiced in daily life, and guarded as the foundation of national identity. To understand the Maldives beyond its beaches and resorts, one must step into its mosques, listen to the calls to prayer echo across the atolls, and see how Islam has defined every aspect of life for centuries. Long before the Maldives was known as a Muslim nation, these islands were shaped by cultural currents flowing across the Indian Ocean. The Maldives, lying along ancient maritime trade routes between Arabia, India, and Southeast Asia, was never isolated. For centuries, ships from different civilizations anchored here, bringing with them goods, ideas, and beliefs. Among the most influential of these early traditions was Buddhism. From around the 5th century CE, Buddhism spread from the Indian subcontinent into the Maldives, leaving behind traces that can still be seen today. Archaeologists have unearthed remains of Buddhist stupas, statues, and monastic sites buried beneath layers of coral and sand. Some of these ruins stand quietly on remote islands, overgrown by vegetation, silent witnesses to a different chapter in Maldivian history. The presence of Buddhist architecture, along with evidence of Hindu influence, suggests that the Maldives once shared a cultural and religious landscape similar to that of Sri Lanka and southern India. But that world was not to last forever. By the 12th century, winds of change were sweeping across the Indian Ocean. Muslim traders, scholars, and travelers journeyed through the seas, establishing networks of commerce and faith. The Maldives, situated at a strategic crossroads, became a natural meeting point between Arabia and South Asia. According to Maldivian tradition, the turning point came in 1153 CE. A learned Muslim traveler, often identified as Abu al-Barakat Yusuf al-Barbari, a scholar from North Africa, arrived in the islands. Oral accounts, supported by local chronicles, say that he engaged in discussions with the Maldivian king, then a Buddhist ruler. Through his wisdom, arguments, and spiritual influence, Abu al-Barakat convinced the king to embrace Islam. The conversion of the monarch was not a private act. It was a transformative moment for the entire nation. In societies of that era, the faith of the ruler often determined the faith of the people. And so it was in the Maldives. Once the king declared himself Muslim, the people followed. The islands witnessed a profound shift. Temples gave way to mosques. The rhythmic chants of Buddhist monks were replaced by the call to prayer, and Quranic verses began to echo through fishing villages scattered across the atolls. The change was not only spiritual, but cultural. Islam introduced new concepts, practices, and vocabulary. The Divehi language absorbed Arabic terms, words for faith, law, and governance. The calendar of festivals realigned with the Islamic lunar year, and rituals of daily life became intertwined with Quranic guidance. What had once been a Buddhist kingdom gradually transformed into an Islamic sultanate, governed according to Sharia principles. From this moment forward, Islam was no longer just a personal belief. It became the collective identity of the Maldivian people. For over 8 centuries, despite encounters with Portuguese colonial powers, British protectorate rule, and the modern pressures of globalization, the Maldives never abandoned its Islamic foundation. The resilience of this identity is striking, where many nations saw waves of religious shifts, syncretism, or secularization. The Maldives remained firmly Muslim, uninterrupted since that pivotal year of 1153. Today, the legacy of that conversion is still visible in daily life. Coral stone mosques dating back hundreds of years stand across the islands, their intricate carvings blending local artistry with Islamic devotion. The national flag carries a white crescent, symbolizing the faith that defines the nation. And every Maldivian child learns the story of how their ancestors embraced Islam as part of their history, not merely as a religious tale, but as the moment when their nation truly came into being. In many Muslim-majority countries, Islam coexists alongside minority faiths. In Indonesia, Hindus, Christians, and Buddhists live among the Muslim majority. In Egypt, there are centuries-old Coptic Christian communities. In India, despite being a Hindu-majority nation, more than 200 million Muslims practice their faith openly. But in the Maldives, the story is entirely different. Here, Islam is not only the dominant religion, it is the only religion permitted for citizens. The Constitution of the Maldives makes this very clear. All citizens must be Muslim, and only Muslims can claim Maldivian nationality. If a Maldivian were to renounce Islam, they would not simply be changing their personal belief system, they would be stripped of their citizenship altogether. This provision is not symbolic, it is a legal and constitutional reality. For many outsiders, such a law might seem harsh or restrictive, conflicting with modern notions of religious freedom. But for Maldivians, this principle is understood as an existential safeguard. To grasp why, one must consider the geography and fragility of this nation. The Maldives is a small chain of about 1,200 islands scattered across 800 kilometers of the Indian Ocean. Fewer than 200 of these islands are inhabited, and communities are often separated by vast stretches of water. Unlike continental nations, the Maldives lacks mountain ranges, rivers, or vast fertile lands to unify its people through shared geography. Instead, unity has come through a common faith. Islam, introduced in the 12th century, became the invisible thread that bound these far-flung communities into a single nation. For Maldivians, to be Muslim is to be Maldivian. The two identities are inseparable. Citizenship is not merely a matter of birthplace or ancestry, it is defined by adherence to Islam. This deep intertwining of faith and nationality has given the Maldives a remarkable sense of cohesion, despite its geographic fragmentation. Daily life reinforces this connection. The 5 daily calls to prayer echo across fishing villages and capital streets alike, synchronizing the rhythm of island life. Children begin their schooling not only with reading and writing, but also with learning the Quran. National holidays are Islamic holidays. Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha mark the communal calendar, uniting every island, no matter how remote, in celebration. Islam is also central to the political and legal framework of the nation. The legal system incorporates Sharia-based principles, especially in matters of family law, inheritance, and social conduct. This creates a society where religion is not confined to the private sphere, but embedded in the very structure of governance. For the Maldivian state, protecting Islam is synonymous with protecting the survival of the nation itself. This approach to identity has made the Maldives unique on the world stage. In the 21st century, globalization, migration, and tourism have blurred the boundaries of cultural identity in many nations. But in the Maldives, where even the constitution prohibits the practice of other religions by citizens, Islam continues to stand as the defining marker of national belonging. While the country welcomes millions of foreign tourists each year, who are free to privately practice their faiths, citizens themselves remain bound by the unifying creed of Islam. For Maldivians, this is not a restriction, but a source of resilience. Surrounded by global powers throughout history, whether Indian kingdoms, Portuguese invaders, or British colonizers, the islands preserved their independence not through armies or wealth, but through a shared Islamic identity. The constitutionally enshrined link between Islam and citizenship is thus seen as a protective wall, ensuring that the Maldives will never lose the foundation that has kept it whole for nearly 9 centuries. If one wishes to understand the Maldives beyond its postcard beauty, it is in daily life that the depth of Islam's influence is most clearly seen. Across the scattered atolls, from the smallest fishing village to the bustling capital of Malé, the rhythm of faith is ever present. On every inhabited island, no matter how tiny, one will find a mosque. Some are modest, simple structures made from coral stone or cement, blending seamlessly into the community. Others are more elaborate, adorned with intricate carvings and designs unique to the islands. And in Malé, the nation's capital, the Islamic center rises with its golden dome and towering minaret, dominating the skyline as a constant reminder that faith sits at the heart of the nation's identity. Completed in 1984, it is not only a place of worship, but also a cultural and political landmark, hosting conferences, sermons, and gatherings that reinforce Islam's central role in Maldivian life. 5 times a day, the adhan, or call to prayer, drifts across the islands. It does not matter whether one is a fisherman returning from the sea, a shopkeeper tending to goods, a student in class, or a mother preparing a meal. The call reaches everyone. For many Maldivians, this rhythm is the heartbeat of their day, marking time more meaningfully than any clock. During Ramadan, this rhythm takes on a heightened spiritual tone. The entire nation shifts its schedule. Markets bustle in the late afternoon as families prepare for iftar, the breaking of the fast. Dates, sweetened drinks, and traditional Maldivian foods like mashuni, shredded tuna mixed with coconut, fill the tables. After sunset, streets come alive with people heading to the mosque for nightly prayers, and communities share in the spirit of generosity and devotion. Ramadan in the Maldives is not merely a month of abstinence, it is a national experience of unity, devotion, and joy. The week itself is structured around Friday, the day of Jumu'ah. As the most important day in the Islamic week, it slows the rhythm of society. Markets close early, workplaces pause, and families make their way to the mosque for the congregational prayer. The scene is repeated across the archipelago, men and women in their finest attire, gathering to hear the sermon and pray in unison, their voices rising together across the islands. Beyond rituals of prayer and fasting, Islam also shapes the structure of family and society. Weddings are solemnized with Islamic contracts. Matters of inheritance, divorce, and custody are guided by principles rooted in Sharia. This ensures that personal milestones are not just individual choices, but part of a broader religious framework, anchoring families in values that have remained consistent for centuries. Food, too, reflects the imprint of Islam. Halal regulations are strictly observed, from the bustling markets of Malé to the smallest tea shops in the islands. Pork and alcohol are banned for citizens, though exceptions exist for tourists in resort areas. For Maldivians, eating is not merely a matter of sustenance, but a practice linked to faith, ensuring that what nourishes the body also aligns with religious principles. Even the Divehi language, unique to the islands, bears the mark of Islam. Arabic loanwords have become central to religious, legal, and cultural life. Words related to prayer, law, and governance carry echoes of the Quran, embedding the faith within everyday speech. For Maldivians, language itself serves as a vessel of faith, reinforcing their Islamic identity in every conversation. For much of its recorded history, the Maldives was ruled as a sultanate, where authority was legitimized not only through lineage, but also through faith. The conversion of the islands to Islam in the 12th century gave rise to a new political order, one in which rulers derived their legitimacy from their ability to uphold and protect Islam. The sultans were not merely political leaders, they were guardians of the faith, responsible for ensuring that the laws and customs of the islands aligned with Islamic principles. For centuries, this system endured. the Sultanate provided stability and continuity, even as foreign powers entered the Indian Ocean. When the Portuguese briefly occupied the Maldives in the 16th century, their rule was met with resistance, and the eventual restoration of Maldivian sovereignty was celebrated not only as a political victory, but also as a reaffirmation of Islam's central place in the islands. Later, during the period of British protection in the 19th and early 20th centuries, the Maldives retained its sultanate system, with local rulers continuing to exercise Islamic authority over their people. But the tides of history brought change. By the mid-20th century, global decolonization movements were reshaping nations across Asia and Africa. In the Maldives, political reforms and modernization pressures culminated in the abolition of the monarchy in 1968. The islands officially transitioned from a sultanate to a republic, joining the ranks of modern nation-states. Yet this transition did not weaken the role of Islam in Maldivian life. If anything, the republic enshrined Islam even more deeply into governance. The new constitution declared Islam as the official religion of the state, stipulating that every citizen must be Muslim and that laws must not contravene the principles of Sharia. The very act of moving toward a republican form of government was not seen as a departure from faith, but as a new expression of it, adapting political structures to modern realities while holding firmly to religious foundations. Since independence, Maldivian leaders, whether presidents or lawmakers, have consistently reinforced the principle that Maldivian identity is inseparable from Islam. Unlike in some other Muslim-majority nations, where debates over secularism and religion in public life dominate politics, the Maldives has remained largely united in its conviction that faith and governance cannot be separated. The national flag itself reflects this conviction. Its green field represents peace and prosperity, values cherished in Islamic tradition. The red border symbolizes the sacrifices of past generations who defended the nation's sovereignty. And at the center stands the white crescent moon, the timeless symbol of Islam, signaling the faith that continues to guide the nation's path. Every time the flag is raised above government buildings, schools, and ships at sea, it serves as a reminder that Islam is not an afterthought of the Republic. It is its essence. Today, more than 5 decades after the transition from monarchy to republic, this legacy endures. While the Maldives has faced challenges, political turbulence, pressures of globalization, and the delicate balance of tourism with religious identity, its leaders and citizens alike continue to define their statehood through Islam. For Maldivians, the Republic is not a secular break from the past, but the continuation of a story that began centuries ago with the arrival of Islam and the rise of the first Sultan. The legal and political framework of the Maldives is inseparable from Islam. The Maldivian constitution not only declares the country a 100% Muslim state, it also mandates that the nation be governed according to Islamic principles. The Religious Unity Act of 1994 still shapes religious life today. It requires that all religious teachings, sermons, and fatwas be approved by the state. This ensures that public religious discourse remains consistent, avoiding sectarian divisions and reinforcing national unity. For Maldivians, this oversight is not seen as an intrusion, but rather as a safeguard against fragmentation in a country spread across 1,200 islands. The strict boundaries on religion extend beyond citizens. Public practice of any other faith is prohibited. Migrant workers, many of them from South Asia, are permitted to worship privately, but cannot build churches, temples, or shrines. Religious symbols cannot be displayed openly, and importing non-Islamic religious texts is heavily regulated. For many outsiders, this appears restrictive, yet within the Maldives, it is regarded as necessary to preserve a singular religious identity in a geographically fragile nation. Recent years have shown how deeply religion and politics remain intertwined. In 2024, the Maldives passed its 6th constitutional amendment, a sweeping set of changes that reinforced state authority over political defections, governance, and development planning. While the amendment was framed as a political reform, it also underscored how religion, law, and national identity remain fused in Maldivian governance. By early 2025, the amendment became the center of national debate. In the landmark case of Ali Hussein versus State, the Supreme Court agreed to hear challenges to the anti-defection clause, with critics arguing that it undermines democratic freedoms. For the first time in years, the judiciary showed signs of pushing back against the state's dominance. Yet even in this debate, the boundaries were clear. Whatever the outcome, the Maldives' identity as an Islamic nation was never in question. In 2025, the Maldivian government, under President Mohamed Muizzu, doubled down on its commitment to safeguard the nation's identity as a 100% Muslim country. In public addresses, the president repeatedly stressed that preserving Islamic heritage and values was not merely a policy goal, but an absolute priority for the future of the Maldives. To bring this vision to life, the government rolled out new national initiatives. Among them were the Risalat program and Namaadu Mathivarakirun. These programs are designed to nurture love for Islam, encourage religious education, and promote greater observance of daily prayers across communities. The idea is simple but powerful. By weaving Islamic devotion more tightly into everyday life, the government hopes to strengthen unity in a country geographically scattered across the Indian Ocean. Yet, alongside these religious initiatives, new legislative measures sparked heated debate. The Media and Broadcasting Regulation Bill, 2025, drew criticism from journalists and civil society groups who warned that it could grant the government broader powers to regulate content and silence dissent. Concerns were also raised over proposed changes to the Judicature Act, particularly a plan to reduce the number of Supreme Court judges from 7 to 5. Activists and legal experts argued that such reforms risked weakening judicial independence at a critical time. While Islam has long served as the unifying foundation of the Maldives, the nation is not immune to social debates and political tensions. Beneath the calm image of turquoise seas and white sand beaches lies a society wrestling with the challenges of governance, justice, and individual rights. Migrant workers, many of them non-Muslims from South Asia, form a critical part of the Maldivian economy, particularly in construction, hospitality, and domestic labor. Yet, their presence also highlights the country's uncompromising stance on religion. Non-Muslims are prohibited from openly practicing their faith, building places of worship, or displaying religious symbols. These restrictions have drawn regular criticism from international human rights organizations, who also point to laws that criminalize apostasy and strictly limit religious freedom. For the Maldivian state, such policies are seen as necessary safeguards of national identity. For critics, they represent significant barriers to human rights and pluralism. In 2025, frustrations over governance and justice erupted into public demonstrations in Malay. Movements such as Dule Nukuranan, literally meaning "we will not remain silent," drew attention to perceived shortcomings in government accountability and judicial transparency. Though not directly about religion, these protests revealed how deeply intertwined governance, justice, and faith are in shaping the nation's political and social order. International watchdogs have taken note. In its 2025 report, Freedom House ranked the Maldives as partly free. The assessment reflected the paradox of a nation with functioning democratic institutions, elected leaders, active civil society, and vocal protest movements, yet bound by restrictive laws rooted in its religious national framework. For Maldivians, this duality has become a defining feature of modern life. A nation proud of its Islamic identity, but still navigating the pressures of democracy, globalization, and calls for reform. The Maldives is one of the most photographed places on Earth, often described as the crown jewel of global luxury travel. Every year, over 1 million visitors arrive, drawn by the turquoise lagoons, white beaches, and overwater villas that have become symbols of paradise. Yet, the Maldives is also a nation where Islam is the foundation of law, culture, and identity. Balancing these two worlds has created what many describe as the country's greatest paradox. On private resort islands, often run by international companies, tourists enjoy freedoms unavailable on local islands. Alcohol flows freely, bikinis are worn without restriction, and nightlife thrives in ways that would be unthinkable in Malay or traditional villages. These resorts operate in carefully crafted bubbles, physically separated from local communities, ensuring that the global tourism industry can function without clashing too directly with the nation's Islamic values. But beyond the resort walls, the reality is very different. Maldivians live according to Islamic law and custom. Daily prayers set the rhythm of life, modest dress is the norm, and public spaces reflect a culture deeply rooted in faith. For many locals, this sharp contrast between the tourist experience and their lived reality is a reminder of the careful balance their nation must maintain. Recognizing this tension, the government has promoted the concept of halal tourism. Increasingly, resorts and guest houses now cater to Muslim travelers by offering halal-certified food, prayer spaces, segregated recreational facilities, and family-friendly environments free from alcohol and nightlife. This approach not only preserves the Maldives' Islamic identity, but also taps into the rapidly growing global market of Muslim travelers, projected to exceed $300 billion by the late 2020s. For the Maldives, tourism is the lifeblood of its economy, but Islam remains the soul of the nation. The coexistence of these two realities, global luxury and religious tradition, defines the modern Maldivian experience. It is a delicate balancing act, one that reflects the country's determination to remain both a global destination and a nation unwaveringly committed to its Islamic heritage. The Maldives may be a chain of small islands scattered across the Indian Ocean, but in today's digital age, its people, especially the youth, are connected to the wider world like never before. On platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, young Maldivians engage with global conversations about politics, culture, and personal freedoms. These interactions bring new perspectives, but also new challenges, as questions about modernity, gender roles, and freedom of expression collide with the country's firmly Islamic identity. For many Maldivians, particularly the younger generation, navigating these dual influences has become a defining personal and collective journey. While the internet opens windows to the global community, it also sparks debates within the nation. Some argue that too much exposure to foreign values risks weakening cultural and religious traditions. Others see this global dialogue as an opportunity to strengthen Maldivian identity by consciously reaffirming Islam in a world of shifting norms. Either way, the conversation is ongoing, and it is shaping the future of the Maldives from within. But beyond cultural questions, the Maldives faces one of the gravest existential threats of any nation on Earth: climate change. With an average ground level of just 1.5 meters above sea level, the islands are among the most vulnerable in the world to rising oceans. Scientists warn that large portions of the country could become uninhabitable within this century. For Maldivians, this is not an abstract issue. It is a lived reality as erosion, saltwater intrusion, and flooding increasingly affect daily life. In the face of such uncertainty, many Maldivians turn to faith for strength. Islam is not only a guide for personal morality and social cohesion, it has also become a source of resilience. Friday sermons often frame climate challenges within a religious narrative, emphasizing stewardship of the earth as a divine responsibility and patience in adversity as an act of faith. For families facing the prospect of displacement or loss of homeland, Islam provides hope, dignity, and the belief that survival, whether on their islands or beyond, remains in God's hands. The global and local future of the Maldives is therefore deeply intertwined. On one hand, young Maldivians navigate modern global influences through the lens of Islamic identity. On the other, the entire nation faces a battle for physical survival against rising seas. In both struggles, cultural and environmental, faith remains the anchor. The Maldives stands as a small nation with a big message that even in the face of global tides, both literal and cultural, Islam continues to be the compass by which its people chart their course forward. The Maldives is far more than the postcard images of turquoise seas and luxury resorts. Beneath the beauty lies a story of identity, one where Islam is not an addition to the culture, but its very core. From the dramatic conversion of a king in the 12th century to the constitutional commitments of the 21st, faith has defined what it means to be Maldivian. To the outside world, this might seem paradoxical. An island nation built on global tourism, yet bound together by uncompromising devotion to Islam. But for Maldivians themselves, there is no contradiction. Islam is the anchor that holds the nation steady, the bond that unites scattered islands into one people, and the moral compass that guides them through times of prosperity and peril alike. In an era where religious identities around the world are shifting, fragmenting, or blending, the Maldives stands as an exception. It remains the only country on earth where every single citizen is Muslim. That reality is not merely the product of law or geography. It is the outcome of centuries of resilience, conviction, and continuity. And so, when we ask why the Maldives is the world's only 100% Muslim country, the answer is not found solely in its constitution, its politics, or its history. The answer beats in the rhythm of daily prayers, echoes in the call of the adhan across the atolls, and lives in the determination of its people to preserve their faith as the soul of their nation. For the Maldives, Islam is not just a chapter of history, it is the story itself. Thanks for watching until the end. I hope it was useful. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.